So it's another huge weekend in the Premier League, and I think the biggest game, probably the biggest story, is Aston Villa, for the first time in over 100 years, winning 10 successive games in all competitions, beating Man United 2-1. It felt like the Morgan Rogers story, and Rob, I know you wrote about the game afterwards. We'll get to the Man United element first, but how good was Villa? How good was Morgan Rogers?
Well, I mean, the biggest compliment you can pay Villa is that they weren't particularly good, but yet they still won a big game. They had Morgan Rogers, who came up with the two best moments of quality in the entire game, and it was enough to win 2-1. And if you're looking for signs that Villa could possibly last the course in this title race, obviously they're not going to be favourites in that behind Arsenal and Man City. But if you're looking for signs, the fact that they can win these quite big games without actually reaching their full potential is a massive positive for Unai Emery. I'm sure that he'll analyse the game and think that they could have done an awful lot better. But ultimately, at this stage of a season, particularly when you get into these kind of difficult days in December, the most important thing is to win. And at the moment, they've got probably the most informed player, or one of the most informed players in the Premier League in Morgan Rogers, and he has got the quality to win games. That says everything about this Villa team. I think they deserve a massive pat on the back for the way they've gone about it in the last sort of 10 games. You mentioned there about the record. First time they've won 10 plus games since 1914 consecutively, but they've also recovered from what was a pretty disastrous start to the season. They could barely score a goal when the Premier League season started, let alone win a game. And to recover from that to the position that they're in now is fantastic.
James, everyone's, focusing on the top two. It's an Arsenal-Man City title race, a two-horse race. And maybe it will be, but next Tuesday, December 30th, Arsenal play Villa at the Emirates. I mean, how big a game is that? Because, Villa have got a decent record at the Emirates in recent years as well. So are Arsenal focusing on City, or are they really should be focusing on Villa now?
Well, they won't take Villa lightly. I mean, that was a game that they've lost, I think it was it last season they lost it, and it was effectively the only game they lost in the run-in. Emery's got a little bit of a hold over Arteta and Arsenal at the moment. And look, I mean, Arsenal lost at Villa Park. I was at that game, last kick of the game, incredible. I mean, unbelievable noise when Emery Buendia scored in stoppage time. Just an incredible moment. And if Villa go to the Emirates and win, then there's not a lot that that I think that knocks any kind of idea that they're up there by chance or by accident, to one side, because they, as Rob said, they obviously won a big game against United at the weekend. They beat Arsenal and they finished that game stronger. And I know a lot of people sort of talk about squad depth with Villa, and that if they get a few injuries, that they won't be able to last the pace. And I think that's probably right, but I do think that also kind of underplays just the balance that they've got at the moment with, when Ollie Watkins starts and Daniel Malen comes on to finish the game. Buendia is another one who kind of comes on and plays that sort of 15, 20, 25 minute cameo role at the end. Just, they've got a really, really nice blend and balance at the moment. Jadon Sancho, another one I know, obviously he's had a sort of checkered last 2 or 3 years, but someone who can really make an impact in that kind of late stage of the game. They've got a lot of firepower, Villa, and it's just a great balance to their team at the moment. And they probably do need to go to the Emirates and win for people to take them seriously, but they didn't win a league game until the 28th of September. It's a remarkable thing. And I think that the fact that the league is probably not quite as strong as it has been in previous years, combined with Villa being, so well balanced at the moment, has maybe just closed that gap at the top a little bit between thinking, can they last the pace, to, okay, they're going to fall away a little bit and finish top four, which would still be a great season for them.
I think one thing that strikes me about Villa as well, we're in this modern era where fans are desperate for players to arrive at their club. They want new signings all the time, and they want what's January going to bring, who they're going to sign. And it's never based about a club playing the long term. Now, obviously, Villa have got a situation right now with PSR. They're right at the limit, so they can't really spend in January. But you think of what they brought in the summer: Jadon Sancho and Victor Lindelof, two basic Man United cast-offs. Harvey Elliott on loan from Liverpool, who's literally not kicked a ball. He's played minutes, and he won't play again in the Emirates, made it clear. So they lost Marcus Rashford and Marco Asensio in the summer because they didn't translate deals for them into loan deals. So despite all that, despite the fact that they lost two of their better players in the second half of last season, and the fact that they brought in three players that haven't really contributed, Unai Emery's still got this team, on the brink of a title charge, which is amazing. It shows the value of a great man, not a great manager, a very, very good manager. So when fans are desperate for players to come in January, just look at what Emery's done at Villa and think, actually, sometimes a bit of patience, a bit of sticking with a manager that knows what he's doing is the way to go forward. And I suppose that's a nice little way to pivot Rob into Man United, because we're at that situation again. January's coming, who can we sign, etc., etc. I mean, obviously United need players because long term they have to improve. But did we see signs at Villa Park on Sunday that actually, for the first time United lost a game, it didn't feel like a crisis?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it was a difficult game to analyse from United's point of view, because I actually think that they played quite well for most of it. You have to also put it into the context of what Ruben Amorim is having to deal with at the moment. He's lost Brian Mbeumo, Amad Diallo and Mazraoui to AFCON. Obviously, Casemiro, one of his key midfielders, was suspended. He loses Bruno Fernandes at half-time. Kobbie Mainoo probably would have started the game but was injured in training the day before. He's losing players left, right and centre. He ends up the final whistle with two 18-year-olds in Jack Fletcher and Shea Lacey on the pitch. He's got Lisandro Martinez, a defender in the centre of midfield, who actually I thought did quite well. But these are the problems that Ruben Amorim is dealing with at the moment. And actually, still, when you consider all that, I thought that United did quite well, but ultimately they've lost the game. And the difficulty that Amorim has got is that I think isolated, that game isn't really a big deal because the performance was okay against a team that are flying in the league. But when you set it against the points that they've dropped at home recently against Everton, West Ham and Bournemouth, it's not really that great. And the worry now for Amorim is that he is still in a position where he's under pressure and he needs results, but he's going to have to do it without some really key players in the next few weeks. Christmas is difficult anyway with the schedule, but you've got Newcastle on Boxing Day, you've got Wolves at home in between Christmas and New Year, you've got a really tough away game at Leeds first weekend in January. Having to face those without those three AFCON players, and in particular, possibly Bruno Fernandes, which is a massive miss, depending on what you think. I mean, United fans will argue all day about Bruno Fernandes, his quality, and whether you think he's a world-class midfielder or not. The one thing you can't argue about is the way that he leads that team and his commitment to the cause. And if you take that away from United, they miss something. So these are worrying times for Ruben Amorim, just because of the problems he's dealing with, and he hasn't got the luxury of going another long run without a couple of wins, because he is still under pressure that his overall record is not good enough, and he would point to that himself. He needs results, and he's going to have to do it with a really slimmed down squad now.
Just actually on the injuries, Rob, because De Ligt and Maguire have been big misses recently. Do we know when they're expected back? Because obviously they've got a very inexperienced, certainly Heaven and Yoro at the back is inexperienced. So is there any sign of the horizon that De Ligt, Maguire or both will be back soon?
No, and that is a major worry. I left those two out of the list of players I said were missing before, but they are two major misses, because it's meant that you've got Lenny Yoro and Aidan Heaven having to play in a back three, and they're both kids. Lenny Yoro at Villa Park had one of his poorer games, but ultimately he's 20 years old playing in his second season in the Premier League. It's not easy. The De Ligt one is a worry, because when that happened, Ruben Amorim said initially that it's not a big deal. He might miss the odd game. He was close to coming back straight away, but he didn't make it. And it's just one of those that has kind of dragged. And we keep asking Ruben and saying, is he going to be back? And he says no. And actually, at Villa Park yesterday, Amorim was asked about Fernandes, and he said, well, actually, I don't really want to comment about Fernandes because I made a mistake with De Ligt. I told you all that he was going to be back quite quickly, and there's still no sign of him coming back. And he didn't want to do that with Fernandes. Now, if he's saying that about De Ligt, that tells me that this could be a longer term problem than perhaps they were expecting. Obviously, they will hope to get either De Ligt or Maguire back very quickly, hopefully for that Newcastle game, possibly early in the new year. But the way that Amorim has talked about De Ligt in the last couple of weeks suggests that they are quite worried about that. And they need him back. Again, United fans will argue all day about De Ligt and his quality, but he is a senior player in that dressing room, a leader who's played at big clubs in the past. And if they're going to miss Fernandes, they need someone like De Ligt at the back to kind of marshal all that.
I just want to pull you up on Fernandes a bit, because I know you said, I think you put it on Twitter or X overnight, that United won't be able to cope without Bruno Fernandes. But I think the positive aspect from the game at Villa was that, they should have got a draw. I mean, if Matheus Cunha puts the header away, they get a draw. But the one area where they actually are covered is the number 10 role, because Mason Mount has had a really good run recently. If he stays fit, he can play in that role. You've got Cunha who can also play in that role. And even, a worst case scenario, Joshua Zirkzee can play as a number 10. So they're okay for creative players. And I think we saw Lisandro Martinez come into midfield, who I thought was really impressive in a kind of a surprise in that kind of way he played. That if Amorim decides to play him alongside Casemiro, then all of a sudden you've got a kind of a front five that actually functions. It's just the back where they've got so many injuries that I think is the issue. And I think that for me is where the pinch point is for United. It's not creativity because they're scoring lots of goals now, it's at the back.
Yeah, and possibly, I mean, the injury to Fernandes possibly opens the door for Kobbie Mainoo. I mean, I said before, I thought that Mainoo probably would have started at Villa Park had he not had that calf injury in training. United are telling everyone that it's a small issue and that he was quite close to making the squad, but just didn't get quite there. So Amorim has said all along that the reason Mainoo is not playing is because he plays in the same position as Fernandes. So if Fernandes is out for a month, you would expect that if Mainoo is fit, he will play. Now, that is the chance that Kobbie Mainoo has been waiting for. We've all seen the noise around, the lack of game time, the T-shirt with his half brother, and all that kind of nonsense that has gone with it. But really, this could possibly be a chance for Kobbie Mainoo to prove that he can A, play in that system, and B, thrive in that kind of Bruno Fernandes role. I think what you lose with Fernandes is that kind of commitment, the ground he covers, the kind of the leadership that he gives on the field. Again, I do think there's a debate that Man United fans will have about his quality. And if he is missing and Kobbie Mainoo comes in, Ruben Amorim has said in the past that when he first came in, he didn't really fancy Casemiro, and Casemiro wasn't playing. Casemiro came in, did really well, and now he can't get him out of the team. Kobbie Mainoo needs to focus on that situation and think that can be me. And possibly, he probably right now is thinking that he might leave Old Trafford in January. But if he can come in and play a string of games, impress Amorim, and Amorim goes, actually, you were right all along, you should have been playing, then maybe Kobbie Mainoo's future is at Man United. This is his chance to take it and prove everyone that he should have been playing all along.
Rob, we're talking a bit about Ruben Amorim scrambling for answers. Obviously, the January window is just around the corner. How active do you expect United to be, and is Antoine Semenyo the answer?
Well, I don't think he's the answer. But I thought that Ruben Amorim on Friday gave a really interesting answer when he was asked about January, because he said pointedly, we might do something, but it might not be the thing that you all expect us to do. And what we expect United to do is to sign a central midfielder. That is at the top of their list. The issue, though, that they've got is that the likes of Elliot Anderson, Adam Wharton aren't going to be available in January. So that has to be pushed back to the summer. So if you're not going to buy those in January and you have got money to spend, they're treating Semenyo as what they would call a market opportunity, in that he's got a release clause for 65 million, I think valid for the first 10 days. He is the type of player that they think would boost the squad long term. He's not what they need right now, but they don't feel that they can pass up the opportunity to pass on a player who has got proven Premier League quality and is right in their age bracket at 25 years old. So it's possible that they go all out to sign Semenyo in January against the likes of Man City, Liverpool and Tottenham, that he's added to a group of attackers that is quite well stocked anyway, with when Mbeumo when he comes back, Cunha, Sesko, Fernandes when he comes back, they've got Xerxes still, you've got Ahmad who can play as a 10, so all these players kind of battling for the same position. But United will look at it, or are saying that they're looking at it as a long-term prospect, and they're hoping that possibly they could add Semenyo in January and then move to the summer and sign the likes of Anderson or Wharton, and then you've got a far more well-rounded squad than you had at the start of this season. Again, though, lots of United fans will go, I appreciate that Semenyo's got fantastic quality. He's having probably his best season in the Premier League, but why are you spending £65 million on him when you could be investing in a central midfielder, which you are in desperate need of? The January window is tough, and that there are all these kind of conversations that go with it.